I think you have to speak into it.
Speak into the mic, he said. Is that good? Too close? How's that? Right there? Hi, my name's Dave. I'm with a company called Liftology. I've been in franchising for about 16 years. That started with a brand that I built called 101 Mobility, which is in the same general industry as Liftology, installing access and mobility equipment for mostly seniors, but other people with disabilities throughout the community. Started that company in 2008 with a couple of partners. We franchised it in 2010. That company grew spectacularly over the last 15 years or so. It now has about 120 locations throughout North America, and is about a $150 million system in terms of system-wide sales. I had left that company in 2020 after we had sold the company to private equity some years prior to that. And for the last 5 years, was working as a fractional CEO, helping to scale in franchising, another franchise business, totally different industry, a lot closer to Aaron's industry in the kids' sports area. And that got to a point where that kind of came to a natural conclusion and started thinking about what next. Well, I love franchising. For those of you who don't know that much about franchising, it's an amazing community. Franchisors have a tendency to get really friendly and get to know each other and work together to try to build great companies together, even in some cases where you might be competitors. And so I really fell in love with franchising as a model. And over the last couple of months or beginning of this year, I started thinking about, well, what's next for me? And after a few conversations in the franchise world, it became clear to me that there was still a really big opportunity in the franchise world as well as in the access and mobility industry specifically. Today, there are only 2 companies in that space that are franchisors of any significance, I would call it. 101 Mobility is one of those, and the other one is a company called Next Day Access. And so there's those 2 entities out there, and there's a collaboration of small local dealers that sell and install these products, but the market is still really underserved. In a little bit of secret shopping exercises that my partners and I have done, we found that, for people, how many of you have baby boomer parents here? If your parents are baby boomers, right? There's 76 million baby boomers that are turning 80 next year. The first wave of them starts to turn 80 next year. And one of the things that we found in the mobility and access industry is that the service levels and just being able to get somebody to help you with what you need hasn't really been there. The industry has been kind of stagnant, and there's still a really big need, and people really have sometimes a hard time finding somebody to just provide, these types of equipment and services that they may need for their loved ones. And that's still true today. So I decided to get back into that space and launch a new brand. It's called Liftology. And we install stair lifts, wheelchair ramps, home elevators, vertical platform lifts, mostly residential, a little bit commercial. I actually teamed up with a couple of franchise owners that were former owners of my past brand, 101 Mobility, which if you know anything about the relationships between franchisees and franchisors, it's a kind of a cool thing to say that they still like me enough to want to be my partners, right? So they had sold their business actually to the home office. They were one of our top, multi-million-dollar franchise owners, had sold their business to the corporate office around the same time that I had left, and were interested in getting back into the business because they saw what I saw, which is that there's still a fairly significant need, and there's a growing industry here for helping people as they age stay in homes and have safe access to their homes and communities. And so we're brand new. We have 0 franchises yet. We just launched in the last couple of months, and we're getting rolling. And that's really it. So I'm happy to take questions. I probably ran a little short.
More questions.
No questions. All right. Short day for me. Yes.
So, brand new organization, no franchisees. Tell me why I should invest.
Yeah. So, a couple of things. First one is I'm an experienced franchisor. I know what I'm doing. I've done this successfully a couple of times now. And so I have put together, and my team have put together the systems and processes to be successful in the business. What I have this time around that I didn't have previously is that I am partnered up with some actual franchise operators of the business. So my business partners are folks that ran multiple locations of the former brand successfully. And so they know a lot about what I don't know in terms of how to really run these businesses day to day. So I'm really fortunate for that. The other key thing I think is that, in franchising, as these businesses scale up, especially in our kind of an industry, scarcity becomes a bit of an issue. So when you look at, like if you said, for example, hey, I'm interested in your industry, access and mobility, and I probably wouldn't want to go do this on my own because it's complex and I would need somebody to help me do that. So what can I look at in terms of franchises? Well, if you're here in Denver, for example, well, can I open a 101 Mobility in Denver? No, they're sold out. Can I open another brand? No, they're all sold out, right? So these territories kind of get sold out. So there's a gap in the market right now. The thing that, as we talk to our key suppliers, is that the more sophisticated operators, like the franchise organizations in the space, are starting to suck most of the oxygen out of the room. The smaller independent dealers are struggling to keep up in terms of technology, marketing ability, economies of scale, those kinds of things. And so we bring all of that to the table. I'm fortunate in that I've maintained some pretty important relationships with key suppliers. And so we walk in the door with really great, key supplier pricing that gives us an advantage over the local independent dealers in the marketplace. So good question. Yes, sir.
So can you just elaborate again? Are you predominantly focused on B2C sales or B2B sales with this franchise?
Yeah, great question. So the question was, are we focused on B2B or B2C? It's about 80% B2C. So our typical customer will be someone who's, a baby boomer or somewhere in that age range. I'll just give my parents as an example. So my mom and dad are 82. They live in a split level home in Pennsylvania. So there's two sets of stairs to navigate their home. They got to get from the foyer up to the living room and the living room up to the upper living area. There's only one bathroom in the house. So, it's a modest house. And there's a lot of people like that. And my mom has had some recent health issues and some surgeries and so on. And so she's starting to struggle to navigate all of that, right? So my parents are starting to think, well, maybe we need some help here. Maybe we need some safety in the bathroom, because it's not just lifts and ramps. It's also things like grab bars, tub to shower conversions, things along those lines. A lot of the falls happen in the bathroom. And so my parents are starting to think about these kinds of things. And so that's a big part of what we do. And then on the B2B side, we do get a lot of our business through referral partnerships like rehab centers, workman's compensation claims, waiver programs through Medicaid for people with disabilities that are of all ages. We do commercial applications, so we're putting limited use elevators and lifts into restaurants and stores and other places like that. So, but it's about 80% retail, 20% commercial.
One last question.
Okay.
Can you talk a little bit more? Hello?
I can hear you. I'll repeat the question. Go ahead.
All right, can you hear me now?
We can now, yeah.
So quick question. Putting myself in the shoes of someone who has not owned a franchise before but is interested, can you talk a little bit more about your operating costs when it comes to manufacturing some of the equipment? And also, I'm going to make an assumption here, but I assume that your team is not the one actually installing the elevators and all this equipment. So what's the cost breakdown with your manufacturers and suppliers, and what's like an estimated profit margin if there are no franchises currently?
Yeah, great question that I can't answer. Thanks, Gregory. But I'll give you some context. So we don't make any of the products. So we work with key suppliers. This industry kind of works like there's manufacturers that make stair lifts and ramps and so on. They generally don't sell to the public. They sell all of their product through a dealer network. And so we are part of that dealer network. So we work with them to negotiate good pricing and good deals and be able to deliver those products to the consumers. And so that's kind of how the industry works. The cost of, I'll just give you an easy example. If you were going to buy a stair lift for your parents' home or something like that, you might sell that for about $5,000 and it probably cost you about $2,000. So that's kind of the margin range. In terms of installation, we train all of the technicians to do the installs. So if you're putting in even something as complex as a home elevator, for example, you would typically have people on your staff that are trained to do that. There is some regulation stuff that varies from state to state, so it really just depends on where you are, and in some cases that might get subbed out. But for the most part, the installations are done firsthand by your team, and we work with our manufacturing partners to provide all of that training.
Thank you, Dave.
All right, thank you, everybody.